Hello my YouTube friends, and welcome back to another Generation Behind Hi-Fi video. Today I'm going to be tearing down the brand new ELAC Debut 3.0 DB63 speakers. This speaker has a retail price of around $449 per pair. You get one 6.5-inch woofer, you get one 1-inch aluminum dome tweeter, you get a really nice cabinet for this price category, and a very complex crossover, all for only $449. I've been listening to these speakers for about a month now, and I've been really impressed by their performance. So today, I'm going to tear this speaker down. We're going to go over the TS parameters of the drivers. We're going to look at the cabinet construction, and then we're going to take a look at the crossover. So let's get started. Before I get started with the teardown, let me show you what you get for your $449. Well, you get a pair of ELAC DB63 speakers. They include a pair of magnetic grills, which is pretty cool. You get a really well damped cabinet. Look at all that damping material inside there. They include an owner's manual that is well written and has some tips and tricks on how to position these speakers. And you also get a quick start guide. And there's actually a statement inside this owner's manual that I agree with, which I'll read to you now. It says here, the ELAC Debut 3.0 series redefines what's possible in the realm of affordable audio. And I would agree with that, and I'm going to show you why. So let's get started with the teardown. All right, time to get these things torn down. Really excited about doing this video. I've been listening to these speakers for about a month now, and I really do enjoy the performance that they offer. And in my opinion, these are definitely class leaders in their $449 price category. Now we get to tear them down and see what makes them tick. So let's find out. First thing I'm going to do is remove this bass driver. Oh wow, this driver's got some weight to it. Ooh. The woofer in the DB63 shares some of the same DNA as its bigger brother, the DBR62. The woofer uses a stamped steel basket, 1.5-inch voice coil, rubber surround, and a cone that is made from aramid fiber. If you're familiar with Kevlar, then aramid is basically the same thing, as both fibers share the same polymer structure. Aramid fibers are used in advanced products where lightweight and high strength are needed. Using aramid as a cone material has a few benefits. It can reduce the cone's body weight while retaining high strength, and it also has good damping properties. This is definitely the heaviest woofer I have removed from a bookshelf speaker in this price category, and rightly so. Just take a look at that motor assembly on this woofer. Now that's what I call oversized. The large ferrite magnet measured around 4.5 inches in width and about 7/8 of an inch in height. As for tech, ELAC is using a vented pole piece to help vent the trapped air behind the dust cap during long strokes. A vented pole piece will also cool the voice coil indirectly during those loud listening sessions. ELAC even went the extra mile and made sure the speaker terminals are made from non-ferrous materials. I really appreciate small details like this not being overlooked. Now let's see how much this 6.5-inch woofer weighs from this speaker. When I pulled this out, this was by far one of the heaviest woofers I have pulled out of a speaker in this price category. So I'm guessing it's at least 5 pounds. Ooh, and look at that, 5 pounds and 3.7 ounces. It's actually over 5 pounds. And I'm not surprised by that at all, considering the huge motor assembly it has on the back here. For comparison, the woofer from my ELAC Debut reference DBR62 weighed 4 pounds and 15 ounces, and the woofer from my Bowers & Wilkins 702 S2 came in at 3 pounds and 13.5 ounces. For the most part, the impedance curve is pretty smooth for the DB63 woofer. Basically, the smoother the impedance curve, the less likely there will be a problem in the frequency response of the speaker. I did notice a hump in the impedance curve at around 925 Hz. I think this might be caused by resonance in the driver. The woofer from my B&W 705S2 has a similar bump in its curve around this frequency too. The bumps that you see in the graph past 4 kHz won't matter because the woofer will not be reproducing frequencies that high anyways, because it will be crossed over well before that point. I'm starting to see a common theme in the TS parameters from expensive speakers after tearing them down and analyzing their drivers. It's been my experience that most of these woofers from expensive speakers all share some common characteristics. They all utilize woofers with a low inductance voice coil, strong motor assembly, also known as BL or force factor, and the woofer is well damped. This is also known as total Q. Now I'm going to compare the TS parameters from the ELAC DB63 woofer with woofers from a B&W 705S2 and KEF-Q3 Meta. Both of these speakers are quite a bit more expensive than the DB63, and I think some of you might be surprised by how this woofer matches up. Take for example voice coil inductance. A woofer with a lower inductance voice coil will have less distortion and better transients than a woofer with a higher inductance voice coil. I'll provide some links in the description that support this if you'd like to read more about it. In front of you are the TS parameters of the woofers that I've measured from the B&W 705S2, KEF-Q3 Meta, and ELAC Debut 3.0 DB63. The inductance on the ELAC DB63 woofer has 2.4 times less inductance than the woofer from the KEF-Q3 Meta. That's incredible considering the KEF-Q3 Meta is $7.99 a pair. Now let's compare the woofer inductance from a pair of B&W 705S2 speakers that had a retail price of $2,500. The inductance from the B&W woofer is 0.113 millihenries versus 0.192 millihenries. This means the woofer from the B&W is 1.69 times less inductive than the woofer from ELAC, and yet the B&Ws are over 5.5 times more expensive. BL tells us the strength of the motor assembly, also known as force factor. In very simple terms, the higher BL is, the more control it will have over a speaker's cone or diaphragm. This results in the ability to reproduce the music more precisely. If you look at the parameters of the different speakers, you will see that BL from the DB63 woofer is higher than the woofers from B&W and KEF. A woofer's FS, or resonant frequency, is a key parameter that tells us how comfortable it is with playing low-frequency notes. In simple terms, a woofer with a lower FS will be able to produce lower frequencies more efficiently and easier than one with a higher resonant frequency. The woofer from ELAC has a resonant frequency of 53 Hz. The B&W has a resonant frequency of 44 Hz, and the KEF-Q3 Meta has a resonant frequency of 71 Hz. Another variable to be mindful of is speaker Q, or quality factor. This is a unitless number that expresses how a woofer resonates within an enclosure. Ever heard the term one-note woofer? That's because the speaker has a higher Q and resonates over a very narrow frequency band, versus a lower Q speaker that resonates over a very wide frequency band. In terms of sound, a higher Q speaker will produce lots of bass but lacks tautness and will have poor definition. This leads to a one-note bass sound. A speaker with a lower Q will have less bass but will be tighter, cleaner, and will have more definition. Personally, I prefer speakers with a Q below 1 to avoid the one-note bass sound. The ELAC DB63 is not a one-note woofer at all. This speaker is well damped and has a Q of 0.7059. Most speakers I review in this price category have a Q closer to 1, and the ultra-budget speakers I review have a Q well above 1. The woofer in the DB63 is pretty impressive for this price category. The engineers have incorporated some pretty nice characteristics into this driver that are normally found in speakers costing a few bucks more. Now I'm going to test the tolerances between the two woofers to see how much of a matched pair they are. The graph you're looking at shows the impedance curve from both woofers. The green line is woofer 1 and the blue line is woofer 2. As you can see from the impedance graph, ELAC has some really tight manufacturing tolerances for their woofers because both woofers are pretty much identical. The difference in max impedance is less than 1%, and the differences in resonant frequency is 0.12%. That's really good for this price point. Nice job, ELAC. This tweeter uses a 1-inch dome made from aluminum and also has a decent sized ferrite magnet. The tweeter's mounting plate and waveguide are made from plastic and seem well made. Even the terminals on the back of the tweeter are made from non-ferrous materials. I wonder if the color of the aluminum dome is the result of a coating that has been applied to improve the breakup frequency of the tweeter, or if it's there just for appearance. If anyone knows, let me know by leaving a comment down below. ELAC is also using a waveguide on the tweeter to help with the response, and from my ears, it's doing a pretty good job. Here is the impedance curve and TS parameters that I measured from this tweeter. The tweeter has a smooth impedance curve and the resonant frequency came in at 1,215 Hz. The quality of the cabinet for the DB63 is in my opinion above average for this price point. The cabinet is well damped and construction quality is very good. The front baffle came in at 25 millimeters thick, which is just under 1 inch, and the rear cabinet wall measured 15.3 millimeters thick. I would assume the sidewalls are the same thickness, but I have no way of measuring them. On the inside of the cabinet is one brace that ties the two sidewalls together, which will help reduce any cabinet resonances that are taking place. The port is about 9.5 inches in length by 2.25 inches in width. The port is flared on both ends, and I didn't hear any port chuffing during my listening tests. The finish on the sides and back cabinet walls have a textured wood grain finish made from vinyl. Normally at this price point I can find the seams in the finish, but ELAC did a really nice job with the finish on the DB63 and I couldn't find any. The finish on the front baffle is different from the rest of the cabinet and is finished in a satin black color. This gives the front baffle a subtle contrast compared to the rest of the cabinet. I'm a big fan of how the new Debut series looks and think it gives the speaker a sharp and modern appearance. This is definitely one of the nicer cabinets both in construction and finish that I have torn down in this price category. Port tuning for the DB63 cabinet measured at 47.78 Hz. I believe there are some small cabinet resonances taking place between 175 and 240 Hz that I circled in red. I think the amplitude of these resonances might be small enough that they won't be audible. The resonance you see circled in yellow is caused by the driver and not the cabinet, and I already went over this in the woofer section of this video. The terminal cup is held in by 4 Phillips head screws and is very easy to remove. Now it's time for me to do the most controversial part of this video, and that is testing the parts for ferrous materials in the signal path. IEEE did a white paper on ferromagnetic parts being used in audio connectors, and they found they introduce passive intermodulation, also known as third-order harmonic distortion into the signal. I'll leave a link to the white paper in the description if you'd like to read it. The binding posts are made from non-ferrous materials, but the nuts that fasten the binding post to the terminal cup are made from steel and are ferromagnetic. These nuts can be easily replaced with ones made from brass. I'll leave a link in the description to the brass nuts that I'll be using on my speakers if you'd like to replace yours. Typically, I see the biggest cost cutting being done in the cabinet and crossover and affordable speakers that I tear down, but not with ELAC. There are quite a bit of parts on this crossover board for the DB63. This tells me the engineers spent some time trying to get things right. There are 6 polyester film capacitors and 1 electrolytic cap being used on the crossover. For inductors, ELAC is using 3 air core inductors and 2 iron core inductors. For comparison, here's the crossover from a pair of Focal Aria 906 speakers that had an original MSRP of $2,200 per pair. Even at this price, you will find polyester film and electrolytic capacitors, and a mixture of air core and iron core inductors being used in the crossover. Just goes to show that price doesn't always mean higher quality. In my opinion, the ELAC DB63 offers exceptional performance and value for only $449. I'm rarely impressed with affordable speakers, but the DB63s, they impressed me. The 6.5-inch woofer is well damped, the voice coil is a low inductance design, and the motor assembly is nice and beefy. The cabinet is well constructed, has plenty of damping material, and the fit and finish is top notch for this price category. This is definitely one of those rare occasions where you get more than what you paid for. As for sound quality, I really enjoyed my time with the DB63. The bass was tight, controlled, and impressive for a bookshelf speaker. The mid-range frequencies projected good body and weight to the music that I was listening to, and I found them quite enjoyable. Some of the speakers I listened to from this price category can be a bit thin sounding, but not the DB63. This speaker projects a large soundstage that is pretty impressive considering its size. The high frequencies are a pleasure to listen to and don't have a fatiguing quality about them that some of the other affordable speakers can have. I thought the tweeter sounded smooth, provided good separation, and had a nice airy quality about them without being too forward and in your face. In my opinion, the DB63 tonality is on the warm side of neutral, and I wouldn't classify them as bright sounding speakers by any means. I really like the tonality of the speakers, and at $449 a pair, I think they offer one of the best bangs for the buck that I have seen in a very long time in this hobby. Are they perfect? Of course not. But at $449, I think it will be very hard for you to find a better bookshelf speaker for the money. I know some of you will probably ask me how the DB63 compares to the DBR62, so here goes. Personally, I still prefer the DBR62 a little more than the DB63, but the performance gap between these two speakers has shortened. In my opinion, the DBR62 has a tiny bit more bass authority down low, and I also felt it had a little more body and weight in each note. The tweeter in the DBR62 is a soft dome design, and I do prefer it just a little more over the DB63's aluminum tweeter. I also felt the DBR62 did a bit better at projecting a larger soundstage. This is probably due to the better bass performance and dispersion characteristics of the DBR62 over the DB63. Which makes me wonder what ELAC's strategy is with their higher end speaker ranges like the Debut reference line. If the new Debut series is this good, does that mean a revised Debut reference line is on the horizon so there will be a bigger performance gap? No doubt, the DB63 is a phenomenal speaker for $449, and the performance is knocking on the door of the DBR62. Only you can decide if the extra $250 for the DBR62 is worth it. Personally, I don't think you could go wrong with either speaker, but I have a feeling a revised Debut reference line is probably on the horizon. And that's my look inside video on the ELAC Debut 3.0 DB63 speaker. If you guys like this video, make sure to hit that like button. So long and happy listening.